moved into my first apartment a week before Halloween. It wasn't one of those shiny new buildings. It was an old 2-story wooden house that had been split into small units years ago. The paint outside was peeling and the porch light flickered whenever the wind blew. Still, something about it felt right. It had a quiet charm, like a place that had stories to tell. My landlord, Mr. Porter, handed me the keys with a half smile. "Gets a little drafty this time of year," he said. "And if you hear footsteps above, don't mind them. The upstairs tenants keep odd hours." I didn't think much of it. I was too excited to have my own place. Inside, the air smelled faintly of old wood and dust. My footsteps echoed, and the floorboards creaked with every move. I told myself it was just an old house doing what old houses do. The ceilings were high, shadows lingered too long in the corners, but I shrugged it off. As night fell, the place grew still. Every now and then I'd hear slow creaks above me, like someone pacing. Probably my upstairs neighbors, I thought. Nothing weird. Around 10, I made coffee, trying to settle in. The air felt heavier at night, thicker somehow, and the pipes groaned behind the walls in a way that almost sounded human. Then came 3 slow knocks. Not on my door. From the ceiling above me, I froze. When nothing followed, I laughed nervously and said to myself, just the pipes. But then it happened again. 3 knocks, perfectly spaced, intentional. My skin crippled. I stood still, staring up. "Hello?" I called, my voice barely steady. Silence. Then the faint sound of shuffling, like someone moving just beyond the ceiling. I decided to go upstairs and meet whoever it was. The staircase creaked under my weight and the wallpaper peeled off in strips like old paper. At the top, the door looked closed but not locked. I knocked lightly. "Hey, I'm your new downstairs neighbor," I said, trying to sound friendly. No answer. I turned to leave, and that's when I heard it. A whisper, low and close, slipping through the crack in the door. One single word. "Welcome." My body froze. It wasn't loud, but it was close, like someone was standing right behind that door, inches away. The air felt thick, pressing against my chest. I forced a shaky laugh. "Okay. Creepy, but fine," I muttered, backing down the stairs, one slow step at a time. Back inside my apartment, I locked the door, turned on every light, and turned the TV up just to drown out the silence. For a moment, it worked, until I heard it again. 3 slow knocks right above me. Then came a dragging sound, like something heavy sliding across the floor. My heart was pounding. I grabbed a broom and tapped the ceiling twice. A pause, and then one hollow tap in return. My throat went dry. It whispered, "Nope, not tonight." I grabbed my jacket, stepped outside, and started walking to the gas station down the street. I didn't care about the cold or the dark. I just needed to get away from that house. Because whatever was living upstairs, it wasn't supposed to be there. But when I reached the front door, my key in hand, there it was again. 3 knocks. This time they were heavier, sharper, almost like someone was impatient. My breath caught in my throat. The knocking wasn't coming from upstairs anymore. It was on the wall, right beside the door, just inches away. I didn't move. My fingers trembled on the doorknob as a faint whisper slid through the air again, softer but clearer than before, downstairs. My chest tightened, and a cold wave spread through my body. The air felt thick, heavy, like the house itself was holding its breath. I forced myself to twist the knob and open the door. A rush of cold air hit my face as the porch light flickered twice, then died. The world outside was still. No wind, no cars, just the silence of the neighborhood staring back at me. Behind me, the old house stood tall and dark, one dim light glowing from my upstairs window. For a second, I thought about going back in, pretending nothing had happened. But something deep in me said, don't. My legs moved on their own, pushing me toward the edge of the property. I glanced up again. The curtains on the second floor were drawn tight, but I could have sworn I saw the faint outline of someone standing there, watching me, perfectly still. I blinked and it was gone. Or maybe it was never there at all. I waited outside until the chill started to bite at my skin, then finally forced myself back inside. The moment I stepped through the door, something felt off. The air smelled different, like old wood soaked in rain. I checked every room, every corner, trying to convince myself it was fine. When I sat on the couch again, the house was quiet. But that silence wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, pressing down from above. I could feel it. Like someone was still up there, just listening. My eyes kept drifting to the ceiling, waiting for another sound. Nothing came. Yet the longer I sat there, the stronger that presence felt, as if the house itself was breathing, slow, patient, and aware of me. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I could hear it again, that slow, deliberate knocking echoing through the ceiling, like someone was reminding me they were still there. Around 3 a.m., I sat up, heart pounding, straining to listen. At first, there was only the quiet hum of my refrigerator, the kind of silence that feels too deep to be normal. But then beneath it, I caught something else. A faint shuffle, not from upstairs this time. It was coming from inside the walls. The sound was soft, uneven, like someone dragging their feet through the house's hollow bones. My blood turned cold. I turned my head slowly toward the wall beside the couch, the sound clearer now, closer. Then it stopped. The silence was so sharp, it hurt. I barely breathed before I heard it, a whisper, soft but right next to my ear. Welcome home. My stomach dropped. It was the same voice. I stumbled backward into the kitchen, my eyes locked on the wall, half expecting it to open up. My brain screamed to leave, but my body wouldn't move. Calling the landlord at 3 a.m. sounded ridiculous, but something deep inside told me I shouldn't stay another second. My hands shook as I grabbed my phone and dialed his number. He answered after 2 rings, his voice groggy and irritated. I tried to explain, but about the footsteps, the whisper, someone being upstairs. There was a pause. A long, heavy pause. Then he said, "You said upstairs?" I swallowed hard and said yes. The footsteps were right above my living room. Another silence followed, and when he finally spoke again, his voice was lower, careful. "Kid, there's no one up there. That floor's been empty for years. No one lives there." I froze. My eyes lifted toward the ceiling as my pulse hammered in my ears. I wanted to believe I misheard, but I knew what I heard that night. I talked to that voice. The landlord didn't argue. He just told me to get out of the apartment immediately and wait outside until morning. That was all I needed to hear. I didn't think I just ran. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped the keys, but I somehow managed to unlock the door and fling it open. A rush of icy air hit me, carrying that strange smell of wet earth like something freshly dug up. I froze for just a second, trying to make sense of it. Then I heard it. Footsteps right above me. Slow, heavy, getting closer to the top of the stairs that led straight to my door. I looked up and saw the top step bend slightly, like someone invisible was standing there, waiting. That was it. I bolted. I sprinted out to the sidewalk, gasping for air, my breath clouding in the cold October night. When I turned back, the old house loomed in silence, its windows dark except for one, the second-floor window, the one the landlord swore was empty, and in that faint yellow light I saw it, a figure, just standing there, still as stone, staring down at me. Then, without a sound, it moved back into the shadows until the window went completely black. That morning, I was gone. I left the keys in the mailbox, packed my car, and never looked back. A few days later, the landlord called again. He said the maintenance guys checked the upstairs unit, no one had been there. The place was thick with dust, furniture untouched for years. But there was one thing they couldn't explain. A single, clean handprint on the inside of the door, as if someone had been standing there, waiting for me to come home. Sometimes, when I drive down that old street on Halloween night, I can't help but slow down just a little. The house is still there, faded, boarded up, and forgotten by everyone except me. The second-floor window's cracked now, covered in dust and cobwebs, but I always feel that same heavy pull in my chest when I pass by. It's like something inside knows I'm there, watching. I never see anyone, never hear anything, but that sinking feeling never goes away. Every single year, it's the same, like someone's still up there, waiting for another new tenant just to say hello. Maybe that's why I can never bring myself to stop completely, no matter how curious I get. Some doors are better left closed. Anyway, if you made it this far, thank you for listening. If this story gave you chills, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe for more real Halloween horror stories just like this one. And tell me in the comments, would you ever spend the night in an old house like that? Or would you get as far away as possible? Grew up on a quiet stretch of farmland, about half an hour from the nearest town. Out there, you could go days without seeing another person. Our closest neighbor lived nearly 2 miles away, and at night the silence was so deep it almost felt alive, like the land itself was holding its breath. The air had that heavy stillness you only notice when there's nothing left to fill it but your own heartbeat. I never thought that kind of silence could turn against you, until that one Halloween night. Our farmhouse was ancient, built back in the late 1000s, 800s, with creaky wooden floors and narrow hallways that always seemed too dark, even in daylight. Every October, my parents would decorate the porch with a few faded pumpkins and hay bales left over from harvest. It was a little tradition of ours, something warm and familiar. But that year, something felt off. The nights were colder, the wind sharper, like it carried whispers instead of air. Even our dog Dot, who usually loved sleeping on the porch, refused to stay outside after sunset. I was 16 when it first happened. My parents had gone to bed upstairs, and I was sitting alone in the living room, watching the old grandfather clock tick closer to midnight. The whole house was still. No creaks, no hum, not even a floorboard sighing under the weight of time. Then, just as the minute hand hit 12:12, the doorbell rang. Once, loud and sharp. The sound cut through the silence like a knife. For a second, I thought I imagined it, but our doorbell wasn't some electronic chime. It was an old brass button connected to a mechanical bell that clanged deep inside the wall. You couldn't mistake that sound. We just sat there, frozen, staring at the front door, waiting for it to ring again. But nothing happened. Just the faint whistle of the wind crawling through the cracks. The next morning I told my parents, but they laughed it off. Probably some kids messing around, my dad said. But we both knew that didn't make sense. Our driveway stretched half a mile through open dirt road. You'd need headlights, and footprints would have been all over the mud. But there were none. The next Halloween it happened again. Same time. same single chime. This time, my dad waited by the door, shotgun propped against the wall. When the bell rang, he yanked the door open so fast it slammed against the siding. But there was no one. No tracks, no movement. Just the dark field stretching out forever. We tore out the doorbell the next day, wires and all, leaving nothing but a clean patch of wood where it used to be. But that didn't stop it. Every year after that, when the clock struck 12, we'd still hear that same metallic ring echo through the house. By the time I left for college, it had become our family's strange little Halloween tradition. Waiting for a doorbell that didn't exist anymore. And to this day, I still can't explain who, or what was ringing it. When I came home for fall break during my second year of college, I could tell right away something was wrong with the farmhouse. The porch decorations were still up, but everything looked forgotten. The pumpkin sat uncarved, and the hay bales hadn't been touched. My mom looked exhausted, and my dad, who was usually full of jokes, barely spoke. It didn't take long before I found out why. They'd heard the doorbell again the year before, but this time it didn't stop after one ring. My mom told me it rang 3 times, each one exactly a minute apart. Her voice trembled when she said it, and she tried to laugh it off, saying maybe it was a prank, maybe I'd come home early to mess with them. But we both knew that wasn't true. I could see in her eyes that she was scared. That Halloween, I told them I'd stay up with them just to see for myself. We turned off all the lights except for the little lamp by the window and waited. The whole house felt tense, like it was holding its breath. The wind outside made the cornfields rustle like whispers, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't sure I wanted to know what would happen when midnight came. The wind outside howled through the fields, making the cornstalks sound like they were whispering secrets to each other. When the clock hit 11:59, everything went still. Even the air felt heavy, like the house itself was waiting. Then it came. The same sharp metallic clang echoing through the walls. It was the exact sound I'd heard as a kid, only this time it felt closer. My dad jumped up, grabbed his flashlight, and yanked the door open. The porch was empty, but when his light swept across the steps, it froze on something that made my stomach drop, tinny wet, footprints leading down the dirt path. Bare feet. Small. Like a child's. We followed the trail, hearts pounding, every crunch of gravel sounding too loud in the silence, but halfway down the driveway the prints just stopped. No turn, no sign of where they went, like whoever made them had vanished right into the air. My dad lowered the flashlight slowly, and for a long moment, none of us said a word. The only sound was the wind, soft again now, almost like it was laughing. When we came back inside, the doorbell rang again, louder this time, sharp and angry, echoing through the whole house. My mom gasped and grabbed my arm while my dad pressed his ear against the wall where the bell used to be, his face drained of color. "It's inside the wall," he whispered, his voice barely audible. That night, none of us slept. Every hour we heard faint tapping sounds, soft, rhythmic, like fingertips brushing the wood or nails dragging slowly from within. My mom whispered prayers under her breath, clutching her rosary, while my dad sat by the front door, his old lantern flickering beside him. Around 3 a.m., the tapping stopped, but the silence didn't feel peaceful. It felt like the house was listening. When morning came, the air smelled strange, earthy, like wet soil. My dad stepped outside and I heard him gasp. There in the dirt were 2 sets of footprints, one small, one much larger, both facing the door, waiting. That was the last Halloween we ever spent in that house. My parents moved out the following spring, trying to forget everything that happened, but I couldn't. The sound of that doorbell, the one that shouldn't have even existed, haunted me for years. Sometimes I'd wake up in the middle of the night, heart racing, convinced I could hear it ringing again, echoing faintly from somewhere far away. 3 years later, my dad called. His voice was uneasy, trembling. He said the new owners of the farmhouse had contacted him, asking if we'd ever noticed anything strange. I asked what happened, and he went quiet for a moment before whispering, "They said the doorbell rang last night, and they heard footsteps outside." My stomach dropped. It had started again, even after we left. I drove out there that weekend, not sure if I was being brave or just stupid. The house looked smaller than I remembered, worn down, its paint dull and gray. The porch light flickered weakly as I pulled up. The new owners, a young couple, stood waiting for me by the steps. They looked exhausted, dark circles under their eyes. The woman kept glancing at the door, like she expected something or someone to come through it at any moment. "It happens every year," the husband said quietly. "Always at midnight. Always once." His voice trembled, though he tried to sound calm. We stood in the living room, surrounded by that same thick, damp smell I remembered, the scent of old wood and wet earth. The wife stepped forward, holding something small in her hand. It was a rusted brass doorbell button, covered in dust. "We found it behind a loose panel," she said. "We thought it was disconnected, but every Halloween it still rings." She gave a nervous smile, not noticing how cold the air had become, or how my stomach twisted with unease. I told them everything. The nights it rang, the footprints outside, the way the house never felt empty after that sound. They listened carefully, but I could tell they didn't fully believe me. "Maybe it's some prank," the husband said, trying to laugh it off. But as midnight approached, his confidence began to fade. We turned off the lights and waited in silence, the only sound the faint ticking of the old clock. The fields outside were still, almost too still. Then, a sharp, echoing ring cut through the air. The husband jumped, his eyes darting toward the wall where the button had been found. The sound wasn't coming from the front door this time. It was deeper, inside the walls. Slow, deliberate, moving toward us. I pressed my hand against the wood. It was ice-cold damp, pulsing like something alive beneath the surface. Then came the soft tapping, faint knuckles brushing from inside, and one final ring. Muffled, distant, but real. The couple moved out a week later, leaving everything behind except that broken brass button. Now the farmhouse sits in silence again, its porch light still flickering whenever the wind hits just right, like the house is still alive, waiting. Sometimes I drive past it, and even from the road I swear I can feel the air grow colder, heavier. Every Halloween I still find myself checking the clock around midnight, holding my breath without realizing it. And every now and then, when I'm out late and the night is still, I think I hear it. The faint metallic chime of that doorbell, carried through the wind from miles away. It's soft, almost distant, but enough to send that same chill crawling up my spine. Because deep down, I know it's not just the wind. It's still there, and it's still ringing. For someone.